Hello, and a very warm welcome to the studio. Could it be that it's been a while since you've done any drawing? Maybe you're just looking for some new ideas. Possibly you're going to start a new sketchbook and wondering what to do. Sometimes there's almost too much choice. Well, I'm going to start us off with a very simple mark making exercise, which is going to lead on to some serious analytical drawing and also start us off on a new project. Join me on the drawing desk. So I'm ready to mess around, and I've picked up a few drawing pencils. I've got a B, a 2B and a 6B. Of course, the higher the number, the softer the pencil. So I've got a middling sort of pencil, a softer one and a very soft pencil, and sharpen them up nicely, ready to draw some zigzags. While I was thinking about this mark making exercise, I wrote some things down to remind me of all the possible ways of making zigzags. So could be something that you might want to do, and in which case switch off the video for a few minutes, write down your own thoughts and then come back, because what I'm going to do is stop drawing for now and share with you some of the things I wrote down. So I wrote down angles. Drawing zigzags is going to be really useful for becoming more aware of angles, which are often very useful when you're drawing anything rectilinear in perspective, particularly like buildings or objects that are square or rectilinear. The letter Z, of course, is made from angles. We can think about working at different speeds. Draw fast, draw slow. You can draw small marks depending on the movement of your fingers or the movement of your arm. You can work from left to right or from right to left. You can make zigzags that are joined or broken. You can be regular or work in a more random way, and you could work vertically or horizontally. You may have lots of other ideas of your own. And this being a new sketchbook, you might not actually want to work directly into it yet. You can do if you want to, of course, but you could just work on some scraps of paper, lined paper or plain paper, and then cut them out and stick them in. So I'm working in quite a slow, controlled way and trying to notice what my hand is doing and how the movements of the joints in my fingers and the way my hand is sort of wanting to walk along the surface that I'm working on, how that affects the way it feels to draw and the result as well. So these are very slow and considered and careful zigzags, sometimes forming a very acute angle like that. So an acute angle or a right angle or an obtuse angle. So you could have a very lazy zigzag that's hardly away from a straight line, or you could have a very busy zigzag where the angles are very acute. And of course, while my hand is resting on the page, I'm limited to the size of marks that I make. As soon as I take my hand off the page, I'm much less limited, but also less controlled. So that's quite interesting to risk, that loss of control. And the faster I go, the less the zigzags are actually like zigzags. They're going to tend to get a wobble in them. And of course I tend to, being right-handed and being used to writing, I will tend to start from left and go right. But what happens if I go from the right towards the left? How does that feel? I've changed my grip as well. That was the B pencil. Let's try the 2B pencil. Let's try the 2B pencil in my other hand. And suddenly I feel that weird awkwardness that it must feel like when you're a child and first trying to start to control the line you make. And I'm also I think I'm gripping onto the pencil quite hard to try and control it. So what happens if I relax and make it really soft? And actually I think I'm getting a more even line this way. Then I could consider what this is beginning to look like. With all these angles, it looks quite sharp, like broken glass. It's given me quite an uncomfortable feeling. This is no pretty picture at all, but it is just giving me a chance to do some mark making that isn't a drawing of anything, but will come in useful. There'll be things going on in my brain, in my hands, in my arms, in my body that will all come into play when I transfer my attention to an objective drawing. And of course, you can spend as long as you want doing this. You can do it till you're thoroughly bored, or you could become so engrossed in it you might not want to do anything else. Or you can skip it completely. If it's not of any interest to you, you don't have to do this. You could just skip on to the next part of the video. Let me just show you the cover of the sketchbook. And can you say I wanted to cover up, there was the name of the art shop where I bought the sketchbook from, and I just wanted to cover it with some collage. So I used a piece of paper I'd been drawing zigzags on, tore it up and stuck it on. And after I'd continued to fill the piece of paper with zigzags, I went into the sketchbook and did the same on the first page and began finding little areas where I could do some shading in or add zigzags within the shapes that I've created where there's overlapping. So it's beginning to develop into quite an interesting doodle. Good time, I think, for some analytical drawing. So I have prepared a piece of folded paper. This is going to be my my subject for drawing. And of course, it's a white piece of paper, catches the light in a really interesting way. And you can see the angles formed in perspective by the folds. So this is going to sit on the desk in front of me. I'm just using quite a light pressure to begin with, so that I don't make such a heavy mark that it's difficult to erase if I want to change my mind. I always find that if I try and make corrections too early on, it just breaks the flow of my observation. I'm just judging these different points in relation to each other by looking up at my subject, down at my drawing, up at my subject, down at my drawing. Of course, all these angles, each one is different from the next. Partly because the paper is sitting unevenly, partly because they're affected by perspective. But the uprights are pretty much the same. they all stay parallel with the side of my page. So I'm actually running my little finger along this edge while holding the pencil, just touching the page where I want the line to be. And because this little finger is anchored to the side of the page, I can pull a line down that's vertical and parallel with the side of the page. It's a little bit more awkward over here because I'm beyond the middle of the page. So what can I do? Well, as I know I'm going to try and make all these parallel with each other and parallel with the sides of the page, I can turn the drawing upside down and work from this side of the page. So, a zigzag book floating in midair. I think I would like to put in an indication that that it's sitting on something. So I can see the further edge of my drawing desk there, and come through to here. Let me just make sure that lines up. So now I can begin shading. Some interesting cast shadows. Got a couple of sources of light. So there's a shadow coming across like this and another shadow going down there. Because there's a light source. There's a light source from here, which is shining on this side of the page. And there's a light source from over here, which is casting a shadow from this corner. So this angle here is the cast shadow of that corner.